Hello everyone, this is Dark Skeleton, and today I want to answer the question, is Shado-Pan Rider any good as a card? Now, you may already know, it's a rogue common that was released in the Grand Tournament. It's a 3/7 that becomes a 6/7, like a Boulderfist Ogre, if you can combo it, and it's a 5 mana card, so you have to combo it for it to be Boulderfist, but it's 1 less mana. And yes, I did add a Boulderfist Ogre into this deck as well for shits and giggles. Now, to help answer that question, we're jumping straight into a game, actually the first one I was playing, with that deck list you saw before, which is very much just a regular tempo deck, nothing really special about it. Though it does use a lot of commons, and I think it didn't even have a single legendary in it, so you could call it a budget deck for new players. Anyway, in this game so far, I've played Burgled, and that's how I have an Ancient of War in my hand, and we're going up against a Ramp Druid. Now, the Shado-Pan Rider, it came into play at the same time as an Azure Drake, and you'll notice that's actually a really big advantage over a card like Boulderfist Ogre. Yes, you have to play it with another 5 mana minion on turn 10 to get that double 5 mana drop, but if you can pull that kind of thing off, the tempo gain is actually quite crazy. A 6/7 for 5 mana is really a lot of stats if you think about it, because the standard 5 drop is going to be either a 4/4, Azure Drake, or a 5/5 Lothab. Neither of which have spectacular stats, but then you throw on a couple more HP and an extra attack onto a Shado-Pan Rider, and that's actually a big threat that can't be BGH'd, and I just love cards that can't be BGH'd. So here he puts down a 5/10. A lot of other Druid cards have 5 attack and like 5 health, like Ancient of Lore, basically 5 attack minions. And having a 7 health minion is really difficult for a Druid to deal with. Simply because even their strongest minions at 5 attack can't even knock it down to 1 HP. A 6/2 Shado-Pan Rider, which is what's going to happen right here, ends up actually being a big deal. Now, the only exception to that rule would be a Druid that happens to be running Starfall, which of course is basically a bad consecration for 2 damage to all minions. But most Druids, they run Swipe, they run Wrath, and you don't really want to use either of those on a 6/2. I guess a Wrath on a 6/2 is pretty good, but barring that removal, the Shado-Pan becomes a huge deal for a 5 mana minion. I mean, 6/7, it's a lot of stats. You look at a vanilla 5 drop, the new vanilla baseline stats, and that's a 5/6 Pit Fighter. So the Shado-Pan has +1/+1 on top of that, assuming you get the combo off. Now, without combo, Shado-Pan is only at 3/7. However, in both of the games I actually played tonight, I was pretty easily able to get the combo off. It's not that difficult. Rogues run Backstab. You can play 1-drops like the new Buccaneer, which is a 2/1 when you equip a dagger, give it +1 attack, which is sort of like a Auto Barber in the reverse order. It's an interesting card, but it's actually quite good. Now, the Ramp Druid, of course, does actually have Starfall, because he's all about controlling the board. But the funny thing is, I'm the one with the board control. He's just, like, fighting for survival, which is strange at turn 10. You would have expected a Ramp Druid of all classes would be able to regain board control by now. But he's got these big statted minions, and that's real difficult for a Druid to deal with. He might have it like a BGH in his hand, but why does a rogue need to run a BGH card? He could run Dr. Boom, but hey. This guy, I mean, you just run out of removal, and a Shado-Pan Boxer in this case, it's 5 mana for 6/7 of stats. And pure stats is something people really forget about, because, like Azure Drakes, it's like, wow, spell damage and a draw card, that's crazy. And it is crazy. But the stats of an Azure Drake are pretty weak. And stats do matter, even outside of arena mode. So in this match, I think that Shado-Pan was actually a big contributor to this success. It's really good against Druids, or so it seems so far. Now here we're going to be going up against another Druid, but this is a different kind of Druid, and you can kind of figure it out if you played enough games right off of turn 1. To a degree, it's not totally obvious, but the new Living Root spell just screams Token Druid. It's great in Token Druid because obviously for 1 mana you get 2 tokens. You can buff it up with Power of the Wild and possibly even Soul of the Forest, though I don't think they're really running that at the moment. So I do assume that, and I am correct in that because he is in fact a Token Druid. Not exactly sure, honestly, what the correct play for turn 1 with a hand like that is, but I think going with the Defias Ringleader was okay. It was a little bit of a gamble, but I was trying to play this kind of more as a tempo style, so I do want to hold the board control. And a token deck, similar to zoo decks, can get really out of hand if they just completely control the board. That's sort of their goal there. And him actually sending these 2/1/1s into my face is pretty telling that he's not control. I think any kind of ramp druid would have attacked the minions there. So because I'm fairly confident that this is in fact a token druid, my mindset shifts towards a board control over card advantage kind of style. So that means I'll be playing a bit more aggressively, and that's actually something this deck does fairly well. Next turn I have some options. I mean, backstab is always a great option to have, but you have those attack buffing cards like the Buccaneer and the Auto Barber, and those actually matter quite a bit. Being able to stab things with a weapon is really nice. You just have to watch out for your HP. But here I'm actually going to Fan of Knives. Keep in mind we are getting closer and closer to the turn where we may want to play a Shado-Pan Rider, if it was actually in our hand. But this whole deck, you may have noticed from the deck list, it basically curves out very smoothly across 1 through 5, and it's only got 1 6-drop in the entire deck. Everything else is less than that, so it's definitely not a late game control. You will notice the Dark Iron Skulker. That's another card I do believe has gotten better with this set, because you're running into all of these Paladin and Druid token decks where they just flood the board with all these random minions. Zoo is still super popular. You could even argue it's decent against Tempo Mage, because Tempo Mages, they're going to throw up the clones. So yeah, Dark Iron Skulker, consider that one too with a Tempo deck. The effect of it is actually quite sick. So, he puts down an Azure Drake, and you'll remember I was talking about that. An Azure Drake, yeah, it's a really good card, but it does lack the stats. I do grab me a Shado-Pan Rider, and here I consider a few different plays. One option, of course, would be to backstab it and maybe run the Violet Teacher, and I probably in no circumstance would do that, though. Looking at the Blade Flurry in the hand. And that's one of the good things about those cards that can give you extra attack. Your opponent will play around the amount of attack you have on the field. They won't play around the amount of potential attack you have in your hand. So if you have a Deadly Poison, Goblin Auto Barber, and even a Buccaneer, that's a lot of extra options to get that 1 or 2 extra attack. So once again, controlling his board as much as I can here. One thing maybe I didn't look at quite as closely as I could have is this is basically a really good swipe board, and every single druid that's running a standard deck is pretty much playing swipe still. It's just that amazing of a removal card for obvious reasons, and yes, I am going to get swiped here. So then you do look at my hand though. The Shado-Pan Rider, the concern you would have playing it would probably be, can you get the combo off consistently to make it so that it's actually worth playing? Obviously, a Boulder Fist Ogre for 5 mana all the time is great, but it requires that little bit of setup. And this is where actually the Buccaneer comes into play as a card that's actually, you know, pretty solid in Rogue. Those little cards that can enable your bigger cards are pretty sick. So 1-drops and even 0-drops. You could consider running Shadow Step. You know, Shadow Step on a Shado-Pan Boxer? Or a Shado-Pan Rider, rather. Actually, that sounds like a pretty good idea. You play it, you somehow combo it the first time, you Shadow Step it back to the hand, play it as a 3-mana Boulder Fist Ogre, get all of its HP back. Could be okay. And here's where you see another instance of where the stats of cards that have really big effects do matter. Ancient of Lore, undisputably an amazing card. Pretty much 2 of in every Druid deck. Except for the most aggressive Druid decks of all time. But you pin it up against the Shado-Pan Boxer, and the Shado-Pan Boxer is still going to win. Now here, I don't actually decide to trade it in, because I figure that's kind of what he wants me to do. So I just want to come out with my hand, develop the SI7 agent, and I'm not that afraid to use my Deadly Poison. Now, this token Druid deck, the exact deck list that pretty much everybody is copy-pasting, does run 1 copy of Force of Nature, and it probably wasn't giving enough credit to that. I totally expect the Savage Roar. And if you notice his playstyle at this point, it's pretty obvious he's trying to stall till turn 9 and get in a Savage Roar. He wants me to hit his Azure Drake with my dagger. That's probably what he expects me to do. And that's why I say, no, I'm not going to do that. And under no circumstances am I going to put myself at 14 HP going into turn 9. By the way, if you don't know how you lose against a regular druid, that's exactly how you do it. Always keep yourself above 14 HP if you know they're playing Savage Roar, Force of Nature. But, you look at his minion. You know, these 4/4s and 5/5s, they just don't do crap against a Shado-Pan Boxer. It's a big minion, and it just stomps other things. You know, in that same way, Boulder Fist Ogre is not bad. It's just, you could try Boulder Fist Ogre, like in a serious deck, but it's just not quite there. It's good, it's solid, but it's not game-breaking like a Sylvanas is. It's not game-breaking like Dr. Boom. And that's what you need for Constructed. You need game-breaking cards. Assuming you're putting together a legit 100% top 100 legend deck. But, you know, most people don't play at a legend rank anyway. So, you don't have to play like that. Most people just do. But, you look at my field now. 6-7 on the board, all these 3/3s. Pretty hard for him to remove. I mean, Force of Nature is not good against that because they do 2 damage each. If he uses his Force of Nature, then he's completely playing on the defensive for the rest of the game, basically, because that is his combo enabler. But what do you do as a druid against a 6-7? You can't BGH it. It has a ton of HP. It has enough attack to stomp every minion in your deck except for maybe an Ancient of War. It's just really good at stomping anything smaller than it, or even other 5-drops. It's just superb against them. And I think actually, if these 2 games demonstrate anything, you put a deck together that actually kind of plays around the fact you have Shado-Pan Boxer in the deck. Maybe you run some backstabs, well, you always run backstab, or some 1-drops like the Buccaneer, or maybe you run a Shadow Step, and it's really not hard to enable a Shado-Pan Rider. You may not be able to play it on turn 5 precisely, but that's plenty fine, as long as you can develop it on curve around turn 5, 6, 7, 8, even 9 or 10. It's a big threat. I mean, you look at the board. He cleared everything I had last turn with his Force of Nature and buff thingy combo, but the tempo of just this random pile of rogue crap is actually enough to put enough pressure to basically ruin these druid decks, which is not too shabby considering they're playing standard legend deck lists. Now, I'm not familiar with any other decks that do run Shado-Pan Boxer, but, you know, I look at it, and that's actually a pretty solid pick. It really is, especially if you don't have all the legends and all that. It's a common. It's a common you can get for rogues in this set. In GVG, they had Ogre Ninja, but the problem with Ogre Ninja as a 6/6 stealth was that it has a 50% chance to attack the wrong target. And yeah, the Explosive Sheep was unfortunate there, but, you know, still able to push through. I don't think I technically had lethal there, but I would have probably drawn into it, let's be honest. He knew it, I knew it. And I think that's a pretty dang good demo of Shado-Pan Rider. It is actually a pretty strong tempo card as long as you can get it out. So I've been Dark Skeleton, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.